I have always loved the conversation of business, and my whole adult career has been around how do we bring our best self to whatever we're up to in life.
You're connecting all of these things that clients are looking for that often they don't even realize that coaching can help them with. And you're guiding them along and then helping them then see, oh, wow, this is really valuable.
They get focused on social media and thinking they've got to get more visible and forgetting the core piece of building relationships.
Okay, hello, coaches, whether you're listening on Facebook, LinkedIn, or watching on Instagram. I'm back with another short interview with one of the faculty members for the upcoming AJC Coaching Career School. I'm really, really pleased to have Bob Patterson online with us today. Hi, Bob.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Bob is someone I've interviewed a few years ago for my business series podcast, and she's someone that we've been kind of connected to online for a long time. And I asked Bob to be faculty for a few reasons. One, I just loved the last interview that we did, and she shared a lot of wisdom, but also Bob is someone who's been working a lot with leaders and in the corporate space. She also works a lot with women, and I thought it was just nice to have this slightly different background than we've had on previous faculty programs, which I thought you could really enlighten us with, and I'm really looking forward to learning from you too.
Thank you, Ankush. There's nothing that's more fun than being in this conversation with like-minded people, with colleagues, and I think what brings us all together is the desire to have an impact in people's lives. And I just happen to love the intersection of the personal and business as well. So I love that conversation.
Let's start here. And this is kind of very intuitive. We don't have a strong agenda. I know on the masterclass, we're going to have 2 hours and we can go into a lot more depth. We just want to give people a flavor for that masterclass. But I'd love to hear from you around, we have a lot of female coaches. The industry is filled with more females than there are male coaches, but there seem to be a lot more male coaches, certainly more visible. But you're someone who's been very successful for a long period of time as a female coach. What is it specifically that you would share with other female coaches around, really making a success in this profession?
It's a good question. I've never been asked that before. I think, I do work. It's funny. I'll just share a funny story with you. About 12 years ago, when I left my executive position to start this business, I have always loved community. And so I had this idea of creating a global community for women in leadership. And then I realized at some point, I was like, well, wait a minute, at least half, maybe more of my clients are men. So I kind of rethought that. But what I have noticed is that my being male or female has not made a difference in who I can help. And yet I know that some people have a desire, like their own personal creative spark, their own longing, intention is to serve a particular kind of community. So I always support and say, follow that inspiration inside of you. But the reason I think that I've been able to work with multiple cultures, multiple people from around the world is because I think I have this sort of combination of hard and soft, of practical and profound. I can be really pragmatic, but at the same time, I love exploring the depth and our innate nature. So I think there's something there that taking off our mind kind of who we want across from us and being really open to whoever crosses our door allows us to serve and be in a co-creative relationship with all of life around our business.
Beautiful. Now, you said half of your clients are men. So
Yeah.
do you typically only work with leaders in corporates, or what does your clientele typically look like, Bob?
Entrepreneurs. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who have anywhere from 10 to 100 to 400 kind of businesses, employees. I work with solopreneurs. Most of my solopreneurs are coaches or people that are in the helping field and want to explore how to step more fully into to their expression or interested in business, working with business folks. And then the rest is executive and leadership. So that's at kind of the C level. I do work with companies on how to take this deeper into their organization. So at times I'll work with, multiple levels within inside one company. And then sometimes what happens is I end up having a relationship with an organization over multiple years. And so in that, we're able to really take a deeper dive and look at culture and those sorts of things.
So that's a real, whilst there's a lot of business stuff there, that's quite varied in terms of what you do.
It is.
Is there any kind of theme of why people come to you and what they hire you for?
Yeah, I think that I have always loved the conversation of business, and my whole adult career has been around how do we bring our best self to whatever we're up to in life. And so I've been lucky enough I started out and focused in personal development. And then that transitioned really gracefully over time into leadership, executive, and then organizational development. So this realm of transformation and bringing our best self has been a personal passion as well as my work. And so I think that having lived both inside of an organization and been an executive inside, I really understand the nature of organizations, and I kind of understand leadership and what's people's minds. I understand that dilemma of the corporate culture and finding yourself in that. I understand the dilemma of expectations and goals and stakeholders, and yet trying to, be a human leading other humans. So I think that my experience has offered me a unique perspective, both as an outside consultant and as an internal executive. So I think that's part of what people notice. The other thing I'll just say, which might be an interesting exercise for some of your coaches, is early on, I was working on my first website, and the person I was working with suggested I do a survey to clients and family and friends and colleagues. And they could answer it anonymously. But all I asked was, me, what 3 adjectives would you use to describe me? That was the only question I asked. Thankfully, a lot of people responded for me. And what was fascinating about that was for me to see that the language that people talked about was this hard and soft, was this creating an intimate space and making it safe for people to go deep, but also being a truth teller and direct and honest. So that piece, there was language that was used that comes to mind to answer your question right now.
So I'm going to tease out a little bit, because one of the things that we talk about in the school is really meeting the client where they're at. And sometimes what I find, and not always, but sometimes what I find with coaches is they can come in with a little bit of an agenda. Like, I want to come in and I want to work with this kind of client and I want to teach them this, or I want them to see this. But it sounds like what you're saying, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it'd be interesting to hear what you think, is it sounds like you really understand the world that your clients are in. You speak their language, and you can kind of meet them in their world and help them with whatever they want to get, as opposed to, hey, I'm a coach, so I kind of know what's best. And, this is the direction you want to go in, and kind of having your agenda is the most important thing.
Yeah, I love that distinction. I think that in our desire to help, we will see things. And based on our training, we're going to see things that clients don't see. We're going to hear things. And, part of what we do in our relationship with the client or the group that's in front of us is we pay attention to where there's opportunity to move in those directions. But we have to hold it all loosely, because ultimately what we're doing is what's on their mind. What do they see? What are they trying to achieve? And when I work with businesses, sometimes the goal is there's been a breakdown in communication. Sometimes the goal is enhanced leadership. Sometimes the goal is they are stuck around a problem and creativity, or the culture is going through change. So my ability to really hear what's on their minds and what matters to them is key. For all of us as coaches. And then what we do is we see, how does the work we do, what we bring to the table, support that. So I see our role as kind of bridging the gap and connecting the dots for people. And as you know, on Cush and the work that we do, there is this formless, invisible variable that has a profound impact. So while I'm ultimately helping them have more of an understanding of the mind, helping them understand their deeper nature, the innate capacities they have from within, helping them understand that their internal climate is shaping their moment-to-moment performance, I will do that in the context that matters to them.
I think that is so important. And I think context is something that is so overlooked. Certainly, I overlooked it when I was starting out in coaching, but it really is everything for a client. And sometimes I've shared with people that, like, I will invest a lot in my own growth if it's in line with what I'm up to in the world. But someone else might say, hey, this is really good for you, but if it's not something I'm interested in, it doesn't matter if it's expensive or cheap. It's just like, I'm just not interested in that. Yeah. So context is like, it is the container within which, like, all right, either I want to go ahead with something or I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, I think it's fair to say that, often when I'm working with people or training other coaches, that there are trainers out there. And if you're inspired to be a trainer around state of mind or the three principles or well-being, like for some people, the spark, that creative potential that's coming through them is in a kind of, I want to teach this. This is what I want to teach. And so go for it. And if what you're wanting to be is more of a coach, a consultant, then that ability to listen for what matters to your client and to link how this understanding can help them, that's critical.
Could we talk a little bit more about that? Because I think it's such an important point. I remember talking to one of our colleagues many years ago, a guy called Dickon Bettinger, who I think you know very well. And I was asking him about his work with corporates, and he was talking about a very similar sort of thing. This is where I first learned it about, he goes, I just asked the client what's important to them. And he goes, I don't care. Like, they might say, well, I just want to make more money. And he didn't make that wrong. He just went, okay, well, tell me about that. And he linked it back. So now you work with something like you said, you talked about the three principles, which I'm really, grounded in as well. Clients in the school have come from all sorts of backgrounds and might have all sorts of different training. But the way you work with a client, I'd love to hear that, how would you take someone who says, in my business, I just want to make more money, or I want to increase my bottom line revenue, or any other like corporate agenda? How would you link that with, how the mind works and something which seems like more of a softer skill?
Yeah. Well, first I'd listen. I'd get open and present and curious. And I'd ask questions. And in that, what I'm listening for is how they see the world. I'm listening for what their world looks like to them. And in that, you're going to hear things. You're going to hear opinions. You're going to hear thoughts. You're going to hear ideas that they've put a stake in the ground in. You're going to hear where they feel challenged. So all of that is great intake and information. And then in that dialogue, what will naturally come, because from my own learning, my own grounding, and yes, the understanding of the mind and our essential nature is core to what I do. And I have a lot of other things that end up coming to the table based on my own grounding. So when I realize that even as a coach or a consultant, where I'm coming from in every moment will shape my work and my impact with this person. So I want to rest on that. I want to make sure I'm present, open. I haven't gotten distracted and I'm off in my mind somewhere, or I don't jump to conclusions. I think we often want to be fast to provide value or see something. So can I hang long enough to really understand and then begin to dialogue about that? And then often what I see is that thought plays a role in all of our lives, and people don't often know the difference between a limited mind and something they're calling a limitation. They don't understand that maybe the way they've over-identified with who they think they are is limiting their options. They don't understand that everybody comes comes to a conversation based on their own version and perception in the moment. So some of those core understandings can really open them up.
Before you go on, because that is so important, I don't want to skip that. That was so fascinating, that language you use. Have you got an example of that? The difference between a limited mind and their limitation, I think you said. Like, could you unpack that a little bit? Because that's gold.
Sure. Yeah, I was working, I'll share because you asked about money. I was working with a solopreneur who's had their own business for a while. And they had been looking at, we were putting together a proposal. In her proposal, I could see that she had a lot of thought about what they would accept. She had thoughts about what she'd done in the past and worked and didn't work. She had thoughts about what she could ask for and couldn't. And so in a conversation, I could see that she was limiting the actual potential of her work with them based on thought that she was taking at face value, based on thought that she was, reasonable, rational thought. In my mind, those are always the ones to pay attention to, the ones that just look reasonable. She was saying, I can't really do that. I don't have the resources. I can't really offer that. I haven't done it before, like those types of things. Well, in a very short conversation, we were able to help her see, is that a true limitation or a limitation of your mind? Can we open your mind to creative ideas around this? And pretty soon as we did that, as soon as she didn't take the thought at face value, we were able to explore. Now, she was uncomfortable, putting this proposal together for ultimately what was 3 times what she was going to offer, but prior 3 times the investment and opportunity. She was really uncomfortable, but she could feel like she was following, like, okay, I want to do this. Well, sure enough, they accepted, and they accepted pretty fast. And we were laughing because then she was like, oh, maybe I should have asked for more.
It's so funny, and I can't remember who said it, but it was something along the lines of, if we put as much energy into arguing for our greatness as we do for our limitations, that would just change everything. And you reminded me of that because it does look so real. And I think that's the power of a great coach, to have that kind of 10,000 foot view and not be so attached to the thinking that a client might have, and really help them step away from that and see what's truly possible.
Yeah. And just briefly, a corporate story. I was working with a team that had been really struggling around a prototype, and it kept failing. They didn't really see that their stirred up, gripped, trying to figure it out was limiting their options. Like, that's a limited mind. So it looked like they didn't have many options. As soon as they started to understand that their internal climate was shaping what they could see as possibilities, that as soon as they saw that, they slowed down a little bit, and just a little goes a really long way. And you see it over and over, that as soon as they got less gripped internally, all of a sudden more creative ideas were coming. And over a period of a couple months, they were able to turn that completely around.
That's brilliant. I love these examples and case studies. And to me, it really gets to the heart of what I want to be unpacked from your masterclass, is that this work is really practical. And I think people don't see that, but it's like you're connecting all of these things that clients are looking for, that often they don't even realize that coaching can help them with. And you're guiding them along and then helping them then see, oh, wow, this is really valuable. And then I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but does a lot of your business come from like word of mouth and referral? Like, I'm guessing you've got a really strong reputation now after having done this for so long.
Yeah, it is word of mouth. And I always say, I have a current mastermind in place. And I just talk about that in the age of social media, people be coaches often, and consultants and freelancers, they get focused on social media and thinking they've got to get more visible, and forgetting the core piece of building relationships. And that, long before social media, we had really successful businesses. And so that core ability for us to build relationships and get out there is so overlooked in today's day and age, I think. And I would say that has been key to my success. Absolutely.
Beautiful. Well, I could keep talking to you for ages. I know I'm trying to keep these to 20 minutes. So thank you so much for your time today. This is brilliant. I'm so pleased I followed my gut and one, asked you to be on the faculty, and two, that you said yes. And I know you don't do tons of this. So I really appreciate you saying yes to us. And I'm really looking forward to having you on the faculty. And I'm certainly going to learn a lot, and I'm going to take a lot of notes from your masterclass.
Thank you, Ankush. I love what you're providing and the service that you give and the heart that you bring to it. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with people.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you.